Zels, a 10. We don't have one.
No, mate. Miami's got a 10, but the
They've got
Boks,
the greatest 10 ever!
the Boks are light. The Boks don't have a 10, mate. And I think that's a big problem going into the World Cup.
Did you ever think we would talk about a Springbok World Cup squad and we'd be talking about there's not enough 10s there and there's not enough goal kickers?
Never. Did you ever think you'd be talking about a Rassie Erasmus team that doesn't have a locked-on goal kicker?
Never. Mate, what's the conspiracy?
Look, I think they're going to drop one of those nines, and they're going to bring Handre back at the last minute, mate.
Without a doubt. I mean, they're going for the 2 warm-up games. He's taken a standby squad of players that includes Handre Pollard. They're desperate to do anything to get him on that field. It just makes no sense to have gone with 4 scrum-offs.
None whatsoever.
They could have gone with 2 and Colby as the backup.
It's a complete piss take. There's no way.
So, would you say that Pollard still makes it to the World Cup?
I think Pollard is going to be there in person, right? Whether he is the Handre Pollard that they need him to be, that's a completely different discussion. But I think he will be at the World Cup, absolutely.
Editor SA Rugby Magazine, you heard it first there. Handre Pollard will play in the World Cup. It's all a hoax.
Yeah, look, we're having a giggle, but it's quite difficult not to be despondent about that Bok squad, mate.
Lukhanyo Am, we're going to get back to the 10s, but Lukhanyo Am, our best backline player. A number 13, and it's not just what he does in that position. It's defensively how he marshals that Bok backline. There's not a like-for-like replacement in this country.
Yep.
Jesse Creel's a very good player.
Yes.
He's been playing Test rugby for the best part of 10 years. Jan Saffenheim in Montpellier, very good player. He's not in the squad. Damien Delandy, it's not as simple as shifting him from 12 to 13
Correct.
and playing Andre the Giant on the inside. Massive, probably the biggest blow. I would say he's bigger than Sia, bigger than Andre in terms of what we lose. And why the hell was he played in Buenos Aires?
100% agree with you. In the build-up to this tournament, I said, we've got depth. We have an injury at 3 or 13. We're in real trouble. We now have Lukhanyo out. Like you say, I suppose in their defense, they had to get him match fit. But that guy, I mean, every time he came on the field in this season, he's looked gun shy and in trouble. He got dumped on his head by Argentina in the first test, and then out with a knee injury in the second.
Yeah, I mean, it's a freak injury in the tackle, driven back. It can happen anytime. Rugby is a contact sport, as we keep on. Eddie Jones keeps on reminding the World Rugby officials as well. But after the fact, the Rugby Championship was played. We lost it. I can understand them playing him against Wales or against New Zealand closer to the World Cup. But I just thought, when I saw that team, why wasn't Jesse Creel starting in Buenos Aires and Lukhanyo Am is starting? And boom, worst case scenario happened. And he's definitely not on a standby list. He's gone, and we really are going to feel his loss. What do you see their options there in the midfield?
Well, they've created no depth there whatsoever. So since the last World Cup, only 2 guys have run on in the number 13 jersey, except for one test where Damien Delandy started a match at 13. Otherwise, it's been Lukhanyo and Jesse the whole way. Jesse's played 10 tests at 13 since the last World Cup started. And they've done nothing. So I know Kane Moody's a fresh face, but there's a guy you could have given a run at 13 to see what he can do. For me, to move arguably the world's best 12 when you have an injury and reshuffle the whole backline, as they did against Wales last year, that is not an option. Moving 4 players to fix one injury is a bad move. They've done nothing to address that 13.
Do you see them going with Damien Delandy at 13 potentially and Andre the Giant at 12?
I think they will move Damien. Whether they play Andre at 12 or move Damien Willemse there, I don't know. But yeah, that's the situation we're in now.
Do we lose or do we gain by taking Damien Delandy from 12 to 13?
No, you absolutely lose there. Massively you lose there. Personally, I don't think Damien is physically the right person to be going up and back at 13 and trying to shut. I think he's a fantastic player. I think he's arguably the world's best 12. And I think losing him from that position's an unnecessary loss. And we're going to use that word unnecessary probably for the next 8 weeks, because we put ourselves in this position.
Okay, we've had 2 days to reflect on the squad. Social media blazing when that squad was announced. When we heard all the whispers, and I saw SA Rugby Magazine put out that story that the 3 players would be out. Especially Pollard, worst kept secret was his calf and how much he was struggling with it.
Yeah.
And lack of transparency from within that leadership as well, in kind of just being honest with the public about the injury status of these players. The easiest 33 people said became the hardest 33 because a hell of a lot of juggling went around. It wasn't so much a 33 that they had to pick. It was how do they keep those three players that are on the side, especially Handre Pollard, and actually make people dispensable that are in that squad. You could find someone's ankle getting trod on very quickly at training.
Big time. There's going to be a few PlayStation injuries in the camp, and I think people are going to go home.
Especially those nines. They're going to be scared to go for that ball and pull it out. It comes through the old...
Sleep standing up, mate.
Yeah. Can't believe his ankle isn't gone yet. You're not even getting me out of France.
Let's talk about the 10s, though, because in October of 2021, I believe, was when Morné Steyn pulled out of the Bok camp.
Yeah, because they took him to that rugby championship in Australia, where he sat in the stands for the best part of 6 weeks. My understanding is that he just thought, well, I'm better served playing Currie Cup rugby for the Bulls, being at home with my kids, and actually being in Pretoria. He was still fit enough. He is still fit enough. He's a guy who, I think, just weird pressure forced him to retire at 40. I think he could have played on for another 2 years.
Easily.
In great condition. Still the best goal kicker we had. The best goal kicker in the competition. And... that's the one thing we've always been able to rely on with the Springboks is 75% of your kicks are going to go over. And when a team plays against the Boks now, as good a player as Bok is, as talented as Willems is, as capable as Faf may be to play a 30-minute cameo at 10 or Cheslin to play 40 minutes at 10, teams don't fear making mistakes because they don't know if you've got a kicker who's going to convert it firstly.
Spot on.
And when you're playing against a guy like Morné Steyn or a fit Handre Pollard who's kicking well, or even Elton Jantjies when he was kicking well.
Yep.
You just knew within 50 meters you just don't make a mistake because you could be 9-0 down after 10 minutes of a test match.
Correct.
So it does change the approach of how teams will kind of front us in that opening 15.
Yeah, well, it undoes everything that Bok rugby is about, which is to create pressure to generate pressure that creates errors that we can convert into points. If you can't literally convert a kick, then there are no points. So you are literally playing line-out drive for your points.
Stormers rugby, because the Boks in Buenos Aires and in Pretoria, they played very much with Mani there. They played a very attacking, phase-dominated game, ball in hand, quick release. Can they win them a World Cup? Or is that going away from the traditional strength of Bok rugby?
It's definitely going away from the traditional strength of Bok rugby. I think the Stormers, that brand, could potentially work if you were tooled up for it, but the Boks are not tooled up for it. There is no Chiva Diamani. They didn't take Evan Roos. They're not tooled to play the game where they beat you off the ball, chasing kicks and in kick receipts, and create chaos and playmaking. Also, it's a lot easier to be loosey-goosey in the URC, potentially when there's less expectation than when the hopes of an entire nation of a back-to-back world championship are riding on us. And even the Stormers, despite the efficiency of their game plan, didn't always win because it sometimes came down to goal kicking and we came up short there.
Well, we know that. I mean, Munster showed there was an effective way to play against the Stormers. As much as the Stormers may say, they blew both games against them last season, Munster had a very clear directive in how they wanted to play and how they forced their pressure on them with a very efficient kicking game. And we're going to see that from the likes of France, New Zealand, and obviously Ireland. Their kicking game will be very effective.
Very.
Which then brings into account again, we look at that squad, you've got a Willie Leroux, Mapimpi, Cheslin Colby, Kirtley Arendse, and Kane and Moody. Which is the best back three that they're going to go with to counter that kicking game? Because as brilliant as Cheslin Colby is, as electric as Arendse is, when they have played, the high ball has been an issue for us. And when Moody played and Pimpy played, it seemed to settle a lot more.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's a personnel issue as much as it is whatever we're doing in training and whatever our planning is around it. I'm not sure the prep has been right because all of those guys have had their moments where they've been great under the high ball. You can't say Cheslin isn't good under the high ball. He's been incredibly brave in some moments. Against the British and Irish Lions, he was great. Kirtley Arendse has done some great things. Willie Leroux's flashed on and off. Kanan we obviously trust, and Makazoli's had his on and off time as well. So I don't know whether it's the personnel so much. I'm not sure whether picking certain players is going to change that. I just think the Boks need to get clarity around how they're playing, and I think they need to get clarity around the execution from 10 so that there's more stability in that kicking game. I feel like the last couple of months/season has been a rough time for us in doing what we do well and executing it well. We've kind of played a lot of rugby and gone off map a bit.
We're 10 wins from our last 17. They go to France as the defending champions. But as we keep on saying, with a different sort of personnel, is there a disconnect between the type of forwards that won us the World Cup and the type of backline that potentially could start in this World Cup?
No, I don't think so. I think we've, like I've said before, I think we've definitely got the cattle. We're physically there. I don't think the bomb squad's going to be as explosive as it was before. We've got the forwards to do it. I just think that there's something missing in the Bok execution. And again, I don't know whether it comes down to clarity or whether it's a bit of smoke and mirrors or what they've been doing. But I don't know when last we saw the Boks play the way the Boks are known for playing and executed it well. We've mucked about with selections, we've mucked about with the kickers will kick, and neither of those things have worked.
One of the big areas, talking points that has come out in the last season is this belief that teams have negated our maul and our line-out drive. Are we keeping our powder dry there?
Yeah, God, I hope so.
Because they've looked pretty impotent.
Yeah.
Is that like just a deliberate thing that come the World Cup, come those big games, Rassie pulls out some magic that they've been holding back, a different kind of approach to the maul, variations to the maul, and all of a sudden we're scoring 5-pointers?
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the match in Buenos Aires, 20 phases in that first 3.5 minutes, we get a penalty and we kick for poles.
Yeah.
Now, the box of Nienhaber and Erasmus Law, they don't kick for poles there.
Yeah.
They kick it to the corner, they drive it, and they score.
Yeah.
Again, we were speaking on WhatsApp during the game. 10 minutes later, they got the same situation. They went for goal again. They missed both kicks. A better team then comes back out of them, potentially scores on the other side.
Yeah.
And you've spent 20 minutes absolutely dominating the opposition. You've got nothing to show for it.
Yeah, that's the thing I mean, I remember having conversations with Ninos when he was still at the Stormers, and Dimitri Katrakilis was taking the kicks for them. And there was that lack of continuity there, where sometimes they would take the kick, sometimes they wouldn't. It came down to gut feel, and I said to him, Jacques, do you guys have a plan of the field, like a map of the field, where you know Dimitri is an 80% plus kicker from these zones? Because surely if that's the case, an 80% plus chance of taking 3 points beats a 25% conversion rate for a line-out drive. And he said, no, they actually didn't have one of those things. So I'm not sure whether that's something that they've done since then. I doubt it, because he's been talking about the kickers taking the kicks and he doesn't know anything about kicking. But that for me would make sense, is to do the maths on this thing. What are our chances of converting this into points? And so, like I say, if you've got an 85% chance of taking 3 points beats a 25 to 30% line-out conversion into a try. So,
if we look at the kick-in, okay, now, Manie Lebok's statistics are very good. He kicks at 75%.
Yes.
Throughout the 2 seasons of the URC, he was the top point scorer in both seasons. But he is prone to having a howler. So he's not a bad goal kicker, but he can have a horrible, horrible evening or afternoon. And he can have periods in a game where he just doesn't kick well for poles. It doesn't necessarily affect the rest of his game. How big a concern is that for you going into the World Cup?
Massive. I mean, we've spoken about this. So the World Cup is different to everything else because you've got to win 6 games on the trot or whatever it is, right? So you need consistency, continuity. You need to be able to consistently fire at that level. And that's the one thing Manie doesn't seem to be able to do, or hasn't done at this point in his career, is he'll have absolute blinders, and then somewhere in there he'll drop a turd and the team loses. And I think that's the problem, is that at this World Cup, it could literally come down to one missed penalty, and that's where you need a guy who's maybe not as sexy as Manie is, but does the basics really well, which is, kick your points.
Did it surprise you that Alton Jantjies was a name that didn't come up?
Yes. Yeah, so
he was drafted into the squad as cover early on.
Yeah.
And Jacques said he's been there, he's 48 test matches. He went on his first tour in 2012 with the Springboks. Never quite kicked on. Had a good series against France in South Africa, been there and thereabouts. But an old campaigner, and can kick well, and has got a career average of over 75, touching on 80%, kicking. Magnificent when he's played for the Lions in Super Rugby. Would it not have made more sense, Alton in and one of the scrum halves out?
Yes, it would have made more sense. But in a way, like Rassie and Jacques have used up all their credit with me now, because you were talking about the maul there, and hopefully they've got a plan for, they're keeping their powder dry. And we've kind of been talking like that for 4 years, and we're now at a point where we're going to the World Cup without a proven goal kicker, without a proven 10 at test level. Like I say, we lost Morné Steyn in 2021. A year later, Frans Steyn suffered the injury. Elton had the scandal. So we've lost Morné Steyn, Elton Jantjies, Frans Steyn. Those are 3 of the best kickers available to the box, arguably in history. And the reaction to that was, let's give Cheslin a kick, let's give Faf a kick, Damien Willemse can have a kick, and a bit of a giggle about the kickers will kick. Like that to me, either you're holding the best joker up your sleeve ever, and Naas Botha's playing at this World Cup, or you actually...
A young and informed Naas Botha.
Exactly, or you are out of ideas. And so I'm very nervous about where we are at this point. It doesn't make sense to me. Like you say, Elton is a guy who can at least kick his kicks. Would have been a consideration for me. You wrote about Ruan Pienaar and what he was doing at the Cheetahs. There's a guy with a lot of experience who can kick his goals. There were options. We'd rather take 4 scrum halves to the World Cup, it appears.
You know, a lot of people saying that the side that went out and played in Buenos Aires, they were playing for the World Cup, they were playing for their place. I find it hard to believe when you've got 2 coaches who have won a World Cup and they've had a squad together for 6 years, that they wouldn't know who their 33 are, that they would need one more test match in Buenos Aires to decide, is it person X
Fabulous
or Y?
Point.
Evan Roos got 20 minutes this season. Jean-Luc Depree drafted back into the squad after a 5-year absence, got 30 minutes. Now, what was the point of them even being there?
100%.
They're not on standby. It's kind of, well, they are on standby. I mean, there's a list of about 20 that are on standby. So every player who's not there is effectively on standby. But for them then not to have featured, why did they not play in the Rugby Championship? And see what they've got. You know, is it a case of too many free passes were given to too many players?
Yeah, I think so. And let's talk about the hooker situation, where we've basically got 2 hookers and Dion Freeze, the emergency backup. If we have an injury to Bongi or Malcolm, that would be massive in its own right. But when drafting Dion in there, and I love Dion, I think he's a fantastic rugby player. I've never thought he's a good hooker. When he was at the Stormers, I wrote daily about how they struggled at the line out. His throw-ins were not great. So we're going to have a guy who, again, potentially comes into a key position. We talk about having to drive lineouts because we don't have a goal kicker. We could potentially have a hooker who can't really find his jumpers. How exactly are we going to score points?
And then what was the investment with Dweba? And we'll look also at Thomas du Toit. Consistently for the last 3 years, they pick both those players. They play them against Argentina, and then come the World Cup 33, they go with 5 props. Thomas du Toit, who can play both sides, how effective he's been, that's debatable. And then a third specialist hooker, again debatable. People would say Dweba's more 13 than more 12 than he is at 2, and that line-out throwing is one area that he's not been strong at.
Yes.
But those 2 omissions did surprise me, because I didn't think they would ever go against that, given the investment that there's been around it.
Spot on. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have anything to add to that. That's 100% on point. Where does this leave us now? And we've got no doubt that the Boks have got the weapons to be very physical up front. Frans van Haber owning the scrum. You know, Steven Kitsoff, huge weapon there. If the hookers stay healthy, we're in it up front. But in terms of putting the whole thing together at a World Cup for 6 games in a row, that's going to be tricky.
It also changed the dynamic of these 2 warm-up games now that we're seeing in the beginning as rather meaningless games until we get to the World Cup proper. Gatland took his Wales off and did a kind of mini Kamstaldraad with them. And when they beat England quite convincingly, it was a very different looking Welsh side they played in the Six Nations. And he kept on talking about they're fitter, they're more better condition than England. He's got the mongrel back with those kids. He's now gone and invested totally in so many kids. It's going to be a different animal that plays the Boks in their warm-up game. Can we afford to take a defeat there or one against the All Blacks and then still arrive at the World Cup saying those matches meant absolutely nothing? And people are saying, but where's their winning habit gone? We've really reversed ourselves into a bit of a cul-de-sac.
100%. And I mean, we are basically in damage control now, right? What we want to get out of Wales is that nobody gets injured. And hopefully we find some sort of goal-kicking form. Those are the imperatives. Don't get injured.
And New Zealand?
I mean, allegedly that was a must-win game to set the tone for the World Cup. So I mean, is this Bok team in a position to knock New Zealand over at Twickenham on the eve of the World Cup? I don't know. What do you think?
I don't think they're good enough at the moment. And I kept on saying they're a better team than the All Blacks. But the team that started in Elspruit was a better team than the All Blacks. Currently, the way they're playing, they're not a better team. We saw that in Johannesburg, and obviously we saw that in Auckland. that there just seems more consistency around the All Blacks. They've certainly got it right with Mo'unga at 10 as their playmaker, Geordie Barrett at 12, and then Bowden Barrett starting at 15. They've got their props right. Their loose forwards are kind of solid, with Ardie Savea being spectacular in the way he plays. But and Aaron Smith seems to have come into some form. So, but there just seems to be a lot of cohesion, and we keep on speaking about the changes that came in. Joe Smith in terms of the attacking, and then also Jason Ryan in terms of the forwards. Did a great job with the Crusaders. He helped Vern Cotter, assisted him with Fiji, and they showed great mongrel in those 2 tests against the All Blacks. Took a heavy beating in the end, but they were physical. Kind of, you saw a Fijian pack mauling. So that bite I just haven't seen with the Boks at the moment. So again, we speak in this incredible game, and I say we as in terms of the Bok setup and South Africans, and it's like, nah, don't worry about it. It's not all doom and gloom. But when I take that World Cup build up to 2019, there just seems to be so much different to this one.
100%.
And there just seems to be a fatigue and a tiredness and a repetition to this one, where back then it was like everyone was going and everyone was doing certain things.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And they just does that. When Rassie first came in, it seemed like every idea, every gambit, everything that they tried worked for the most part. There was an excitement about how things were coming together. It almost feels like it's the complete reverse and things are going apart. Even, I want to ask you this, even if Handre and Lucky Am recover miraculously and arrive at the World Cup, are those guys that can get themselves ready in massive games, pool matches against some of the world's best teams before the playoffs?
No, and I think if you take the All Black example of Retallick, 2019, they did exactly the same thing. He went to the World Cup with an injury and they nursed it, so they played him in the quarterfinal. He was okay against Ireland and he was nowhere in the semi-final against New Zealand. There's just no way, it doesn't matter who the player is, can actually spend 4 or 5 months out of a game at that level and walk into a quarterfinal or big pool match and actually perform at the level that we know they're capable of. So like you said, whether it's Keo or it's Handre Pollard, they may be at the World Cup, but it's not necessarily going to be the Siya Kolisi that led us to that World Cup in 2019 in the best condition of his life, confident, form going his way.
Playing great rugby.
Pollard playing on the front foot, fearless. It just can't be done when you've been in rehab for 6 to 7 months.
And even if it can be done, you still go into that game feeling like you're rolling the dice, right? There's no surety.
There's so much mixed messaging for me when I looked at that squad and I looked at the kind of 33 that came out. In the South African context, we'll always be positive. We'll always believe we can do it, Bokke by 10, as we always say. But the reality is, everyone says to me, we only win at World Cups. We've won 3 out of 7, so we don't always win at World Cups. We've lost 4 World Cups, okay? We lose 37% of our matches historically. We've got a 63% win record. This team is coming from 10 wins out of 17. So it's a hell of a lot of confidence to say we'll just walk in, knock over Scotland, knock over Ireland, knock over France or New Zealand, and boom, we're on our way. And that's one hell of a tournament performance to do on the back of this. So, yeah, I mean, I was bullish, and for the last 3 years, I was bullish about beating the British and Irish Lions. I was bullish about the Boks being able to take the All Blacks consistently. And that bullishness has really gone. I would say it's gone since we saw them struggle against Wales. I got renewed hope when I saw that incredible performance in Nelspruit. But that was also kind of counterbalanced with the All Blacks just being all over the place.
Yeah.
And then really disappointed in the way they played the week after that and the kind of talk that came out of the camp of how sorry they were feeling for the All Blacks because they'd beaten them twice in a row. And the All Blacks weren't feeling sorry for us when they were putting 57 points past us.
Correct.
And they weren't feeling sorry for us in those first 20 minutes at Mount Smart. And then we kind of had everyone wait for the end of year tour, and we were like Ireland 1916, France 30-26. Don't worry, it's part of the big plan. No goal ticket can be done. And then played England and gave them a bit of a surprise because Manie Lebok came and played with Damian Willemse, played a very different kind of game. And we went into the international break quite buoyant that we're on the right track. And I just felt the Rugby Championship was really a lost opportunity to go beyond that first tier selection that he may want to start in the big pool games and say, if there is no Pollard, who's there? If there is no Lucky Am, who's there? If there is no France Malaba, who's there?
Correct.
And I'd rather then take those defeats in the Rugby Championship to Australia, Argentina and New Zealand and say, now we know we've got problems, guys, as opposed to it happens against Ireland or France or New Zealand at the World Cup.
Yeah, spot on. Okay, so leading into this World Cup now, anything could happen.
Box by 10.
Anything could happen in these next two warm-up matches. Anything could happen. But where we are right now, where are we? What are our prospects at the World Cup?
To quote the late Richie Beno, the cricket commentator and great Australian leg spinner, he says anything can happen in cricket and usually does. So, anything can happen, it usually does. Look, we're the Springboks, the defending champions. You've said there's good pedigree in that side. I just hope to God that Rassie and Jacques are holding something back with those flaws.
Please.
They've got that big joker and they've got the big ace, and we are going to see a different energy. We're going to see a different type of Springbok pack scrumming the line-out more. We're going to see a Springbok side closer to the one that played in the 2019 32-12 humiliation of England in that final, because they played magnificently in that final. Some of the most intelligent rugby as well. I do have hope that that's still there.
Yes.
But geez, it's been tested.